Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Monday night. It's 10 p.m. Well, it's not 10 p.m. It's 9:30. I've jumped ahead of myself. It's 9:30. That was the old time. What a great start. Great start. Yes, it's Chris and Mark asking the same question we ask every Monday night. I'll tell you what question I'm asking this Monday night, Mark, in What's Going On. What's going on is we have updated one of our famous chants from the terraces. Do you want to hear the updated version, Mark? Do you want to hear it?
Go for it.
Okay, so it goes, he's from Blythe. You'll never, ever beat Dan Burn unless you're really fast, then you'll beat him quite easily. That is the new updated chant for BDB.
It's not quite got the same ring to it.
Yeah, it's not quite as catchy, just like the man himself, sadly. We'll get into that in a minute because he is not particularly catchy either. So I'm sorry, I've gone early. We're going to get right into that in a minute. But yeah,
you really have gone early.
I really have. Honestly, it's driving me up the wall. It really is. But anyway, we've got loads to cover tonight. Obviously, that mental game and loads of other stuff as well. Just before we do a little bit of housekeeping and reminders, we always say, if you haven't already, smash subscribe. We'd love you to come and join us. We're over 6,500 subs. Loads of room for you and evermore. It's all free. But if you do want to give back to the channel and help us support us and bring you this great content, there is a membership option down there too. It's less than £2 a month, so smash whichever option suits you best. We are live tonight. Jump in the comments, as a lot of you often do, which helps this flow. We've got some in there already. Ian is in the house. Good to see you, Ian. So is Dom Milburn. And we've also got Glenn Ringer, who does like the Dan Burn chant as well. We've got some of the, he's from Blythe. You'll always run past Dan Burn, says Dom. That's a lot more catchy than mine, Dom, to be fair. You should be writing our script. So let's get stuck in, Mark. I had my say on this on the post-match. And our second subject, I'm certainly going to have my say about this situation. So we might as well get stuck in. And so 4-4 madness, as we've called it, at the weekend. One of the most mental games I've ever seen. At one point, I was actually thinking I was watching a FIFA game by mistake. I thought I'd left my PlayStation on and a demo version had come on because it didn't look like a real football game to me. It was absolutely nuts. It was one of them games that people probably throw a wobbler, toss the controller on the floor, and then exit the game when you're beating them. Kind of that's how it felt at one particular point. Newcastle were 4-2 down. The only positive is they got back to fours each. What on earth did you think about that game, mate?
It was ludicrous, wasn't it? To be 2-1 up, throw that away, completely capitulate, and then get it back again was just nuts. I do give them an awful lot of credit for coming back because at 4-2, your heads could drop, the crowd gets on you, and it sort of becomes ugly. But they didn't let it get to them. They took that next step and went, no, fuck this. We have to get back into this. And I thought after the fourth goal, I thought things started to look like they did in the first half, where, certainly on the front foot, things were a lot better. And they showed a lot of fight to get back in. But initially, there were parts of the first half where you thought, this looks good. Apart from the defending for the first goal aside, and we'll come to the second one in a second. But the balls forward, particularly Miley, looked really good first half. Longstaff getting into positions to put the ball in the net. And one thing we've been really critical of him is finding that finish. And he scores twice. So he certainly sort of stepped up in that part. But then everything defensively, everything sort of from the midfield backwards just went wrong. It was a bizarre game, and one definitely for the neutrals, but certainly not one to enjoy, particularly if you're a Newcastle fan.
Absolutely no. Something we do enjoy is new members, and Robbie has become a new. Good to see you, Robbie. Well done, mate, and happy to have you on part of the Evermore squad. Yeah, I mean, we'll get into one particular player who's very tall in a minute, but just talking about the rest of the team, I think I said on my preview, I think everybody said on any preview that anybody's done, whether you were doing it on YouTube, whether you were talking in the boozer, whether you were talking at the bus stop before you got the bus to town or whatever it may be, everybody was saying, especially after the game down in Luton, we need to stop Ross Barkley playing. We need to sit on Ross Barkley. We need to make sure Ross Barkley doesn't dictate the play. And there was one player I can recall who tackled Ross Barkley, and he was 17 years old, and it was for Harvey Barnes' fourth goal at the end. Nobody else got anywhere near him the entire game. And it's not because Ross Barkley suddenly turned into Zinedine Zidane. It's because the midfield three had no idea what they were doing. Bruno's scared to make a tackle because he doesn't want to get another yellow card and miss 2 games. That's pretty clear. There's no Joe Linton in there. We didn't sign a number 6, which was a major mistake, especially in a game like that when you need to sit on a player like Barkley. Yes, he's playing in the deeper line role and he's finding space. But if you have a number 6 that sits in front of the back 4, Bruno and Miley can get 15 yards to the park. Look what happened when Miley was able to get up the park. He tackled Barkley and nicked the ball off of him.
Yeah.
And if you have that number 6, which everybody's crying out for, we're crying out for it in the summer, crying out for it in January. I'd love to get the person at the club on this podcast and say, what makes you think you shouldn't sign a defensive midfielder? We've got a video coming out soon where we're talking about maybe utilising the squad and changing some players to fill in that position who could probably fill in there. So keep an eye on that, guys, on the channel. But I don't understand. I mean, we'll get into the main big tactical problem in a minute. But we praised Eddie Howe against Villa on Tuesday for being brilliant, tactically brilliant in-game management, Mark. He got Saturday wrong. He was too slow to react. And it cost us, mate, didn't it? We got the point in the end, but it could have cost us the 3.
It really could. Look, you come back to the Barkley thing, and I've seen an awful lot of comments today and heard a lot of comments today about, do you think Ross Barkley should be on the plane for the Euros?
No, I don't
really.
Like that, mate.
Yes,
how old is he now? Is he 28 or 29? I've done that to you again. I'll do this to you all the time. I just throw this at you. Don't expect.
Ask me before the show. He's 30. He's actually older. He's 30. He's 30. Yeah, but he's had a good game. He's been okay this season. He's done nothing earth-shattering. I mean, Saturday was the best game he's played this season. I would sort of guess from what I've seen of him. He's been awfully quiet in a lot of games, so there's no way that he deserves to be on the plane. If he plays like this for the rest of the season, fine. I can kind of understand that. But Newcastle had the glaring issue once again, and we've seen this a number of times. Whether that's against City, it was evident again against Luton. There were a couple of moments against Villa where the midfield line is high, and there's that space in behind them, and those balls through. And to get players in behind the midfield, as soon as you bypass them, they're running back. And if you've got, I went back and watched before. There's an awful lot of the tracking back runs that are so slow and laboured.
Yeah,
and it's scary actually when you consider that an awful lot of that play was running backwards, and the effort. I'm not going to slag them off for not putting the effort in, but there were some of the runs back that were just jogs. They're not busting their asses to get back, and it just felt a little bit off in that regard. You see the likes of Miggy who will belt back to try and help, but some of the recovery runs from Bruno and Sean were awful. They just didn't do it. And Sean Longstaff's tackle for the second goal, where he sort of, he may as well be made out of tracing paper for that tackle, because the way he goes in for that tackle with Barkley, and he's completely done and just is lost at that point. And then the defenders a little bit all over the shop at the back. It just, defensively they were a mess on Saturday, and it was just, if you go back to last season and early in the season, it's so unusual to kind of see all of them have a bad game at once. But I don't think anybody really comes out defensively of that game on Saturday with any credit whatsoever.
No, I agree with Darren S's comment here that we needed 6, even just to change a game if needed. The fact that we don't have one is ridiculous. It really is, Darren. I think, loads of people have called for it. People are saying Eddie doesn't want to play with a 6, but we'll get into Eddie Howe. We'll praise Eddie where praise is due. We'll criticise where criticism is due. Everybody's probably seen the Alexander Isak video that we put out earlier on today. Thanks for that, guys. We had great feedback on that. I do think that Eddie is in a situation here. He's in a bit of a corridor here, I think, in terms of his development, not just as the Newcastle manager, but as a manager itself. And I think, some of the similarities people are pointing out between us and what happened to him at Bournemouth, there's a lot of parallels in terms of burning players out and that high intensity press all the time. Players get loads of niggly injuries and things like that. And, you look back at someone like Jack Wilshere, who went to play for him, who's a very talented footballer who completely broke down. And you think to yourself, if you try to run Jack Wilshere like this, I'm not surprised he broke down, because the wind blows and Jack Wilshere sprained the fucking ligament, didn't he? So, but this is the point. I do think that he needs to try to possibly adapt the way he's playing with the players that he's got, to get the best out of Isak, to get the best out of the midfield. The prime example, I'm just a fucking fat lad losing his hair talking about Newcastle on a preview, and I'm saying that you need to sit on Ross Barkley, and I'm saying you need number 6, and loads of other fan content creators are saying that. And how can the manager not see that? And you see what happens at the weekend. If you're proven wrong, you suck your teeth and say, fair play, Eddie Howe, you made me look like a mug there. Aston Villa is a great example. We said Villa are going to smash her. It didn't smash her. We actually played really well. Villa were poor, yes, but we played really well. And he changed in game and he fixed the problem. But Saturday, everything that everybody said they were worried about happened. Ross Barkley ran the show. No midfielders got near apart from Miley at the end. Now, that's what frustrates me. If Calvin Phillips had signed for Newcastle, right? Yes, I know he bad pass against Bournemouth and all that, right? But had he been sitting in front of that back four and watching Ross Barkley when he was coming forward, Miley and Bruno would have been 15 yards further up the park, putting those challenges in, putting Barkley under pressure while he's in front of the back four, while he's got the ball like Miley did for Barnes' fourth. And that's why a number 6 is so paramount, not just to Bruno, but to Miley as well, because Miley's a ball-playing midfielder. He's not a defensive midfielder. He's not blessed with loads of pace, as we've said on numerous occasions, Mark, is he? But to have the lad running back and forward and trying to, win it at the back and then start something at the other end, of course the kid's going to be like, even at 17.
Yeah, I mean, he's just not going to be able to keep up that level of effort. He hasn't developed fully yet as a human. Do you know what I mean? He's just not going to. And as good as he's been, he can't continue to do that. In that role, and I think Phillips hasn't exactly set the world alight since he started at West Ham. And to be perfectly honest, it's kind of gone the way that a lot of people thought when he moved on.
The lack of fitness. Yeah,
he hasn't played. He's going to take time, and in this sort of role or this sort of press or that's high intensity that Eddie Howe has, it probably take him a little bit longer to, one, get fit and then 2, get used to it as well. But he's a damn good player, and he will sit and he will protect that back four, and allow the likes of Bruno, Miley and stuff to be forward and not have to worry about their high line as a central midfield 3. But I think the one thing for me that sticks out from this, and particularly this game, is just a lot of other clubs, and you see this particularly from the likes of City and actually even from some of the lower down teams as well. But they're picking sides and they're choosing a way to play to suit who they're playing against. City is a prime example for what they do to Newcastle earlier on in the season. They chose a way of playing and a setup to stop Newcastle, and it worked to a treat. They changed their usual mentality to stop Newcastle, and it worked. The problem and one of the comments in there about Insanity is doing the same thing over and over, I think is from Alexander there. Yeah. And I sort of agree with that comment, because it's going into every game with the same mentality. And at some point you have to stop and you go, actually, this isn't going to work. You're picking players, and I think Byrne becomes a victim of this. Yes, he had a really, really poor game. And what happens on the field when he gets on the field is up to him. But he's put in a really bad position. It's happened a couple of times now.
We'll get into Byrne in a second. Yeah.
But what I'm sort of saying is that at this point, Eddie Howe has to take this, and you said before, look, we'll be critical where critical needs to happen. We'll praise when praise is needed. Absolutely right. You can have an opinion, and look, you don't have to be a manager or a coach with a Continental Pro license or anything to be able to see exactly what was coming. And if you don't pick your team to suit against the opposition, yeah, I mean, if you're world beaters, then it probably doesn't matter at times. But when you're coming up with players who have no pace, and Dan Burn, bless him, he just absolutely has none, but you're setting him up against the quickest wingers in the league. I mean, Benny is rapid.
He is. He's one of the fastest players in the league. Actually, they've clocked him. He's one of the fastest players in the league. Yeah.
Elanga is absolutely rapid. And those two games in particular, and he's been sent out to play up against those, and he's struggled massively. The warning signs were there on the Tuesday against Villa. As soon as Bailey came on, he destroyed him, and within seconds he was taken off. Now that realistically should never have been allowed to happen this weekend. For me, you have to go pace against pace in that regard. It just takes one knock past. And Dan Burn was a victim of it a couple of times. He got away with one early on in the game, and then he completely fell foul of it later on with a penalty. So he was sort of set up to fail that. But I think for me, Eddie Howe has to start to manage the games in front of him and go, I have to change things. I have to do something different to combat what threat the other team has.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be fair, I think that's spot on. And the problem is, I think, because Eddie Howe had such a good spell with us, that first full season, such an unbelievable, remarkable turnaround of fortune. He's got so much credit in the bank. It's almost got to a cult-like status where people can't have you criticising the manager. You're not saying you want him out, unlike certain shithouse national radio stations who seem to think that we have turned against him, which we obviously haven't, en masses, especially when you have no tweets to back up your article, you wanker, before we get stuck into that a bit more detail. But going to this whole situation, let's talk about positives before I get into Dan Burn, because that ain't going to be positive, right? I'm just going to give people a little disclaimer right there. It's not going to be a positive one. So the positives, Harvey Barnes, back on the score sheet, buzzing for him. I said it in the post-match review. We were saying it in the preview as well. This kid is a fantastic footballer. He's a very accomplished footballer. He is a level above Miguel Almiron and Jacob Murphy in terms of, end product wingers, Mark, isn't he? He's that kind of a player. And what he reminded every single Newcastle fan who doubted him, and we did doubt him, there was loads of doubters you saw on Twitter and everything else. He reminded everybody in a short spell exactly what he's all about. A brilliant tackle by Miley, has to be said. Like I say, nobody else did that at Barkley in the entire game. Had we done that, we might not have been 4-2 down earlier on in the game. So the midfield have got to ask questions about themselves there. But that finish, Mark, touch and bang, that's the quality. That's the difference, isn't it? That level above quality. And I just hope that Harvey can stay fit and have an impact towards the end of the season, because he's the kind of player that could help us get a top 7 finish. I think top 4's gone. If we can't beat Luton at home, I'm sorry, I don't think we're finishing top 4. But top 7 is a realistic possibility. But we need Harvey Barnes fit and firing, mate. That was a brilliant cameo by him at the weekend, wasn't it?
It was, and you're right. It reminds everybody kind of what you've missed, because he looked like straight away up to it. He wanted to get involved. He wanted to make something happen. He took his goal incredibly well.
Excellent. What a finish.
I mean, there was no rushing that shot. It was pure placement. It was
the keeper wasn't expecting, was it? Because he took it so smoothly and quickly. I think the keeper was waiting for him to shoot, and by the time he looked, it was already gone. It was past him, wasn't it? And you thought, wow, what a finish.
Yeah. It was an exceptional finish, and go back to the tackle from Miley on Barkley just beforehand as well to win the ball, because that was what you want to see, winning the ball back high up in the field and putting the opposition immediately under pressure. Barnes takes one touch, gets it out of his feet, and then just slots it lovely in the bottom corner. It was a brilliant finish, and
he nearly gets the winner as well. And nearly gets the winner. What a great block that was, by the way. That could have been 5-4.
And the other one as well, the two balls, well, give him praise. The 2 balls from Bruno with the outside of his foot. The one for Kieran Trippier's goal.
Excellent.
And then the one right at the death where it's absolutely creamed across the box, and J. Murphy it gets his foot to it, but can't direct the ball on target. I mean, those were phenomenal balls. So praise where praise is due in that regard.
He took too long to get in the game, though, didn't he? He should have got in the game about 50 minutes earlier, Bruno, I think.
But I think, again, that comes down to the fact that the opposition against him were playing in a way that to kind of prevent him being able to get that. And once the game stretched a little bit late on, he was able to get a little bit further forward and influence the game higher up. And how many times have we said that? If Bruno's better position is playing high in the opposition half and being able to influence in and around the box, because his passing is exceptional.
I was surprised we haven't had any dirty bots in the old chat there, really, to be fair. After Mark was talking about Bruno's balls and creaming, my word. You get it all. Past half past now. It's nearly 10 o'clock. Mark's going blue. He's going blue for dads. But no, you're right. I think we probably could have pushed on and won that game. I think Luton would have felt really hard done by, rightly so, had we pinched that game. But that's the difference in quality. And I think when Willock gets back as well, we'll have those game-changing players, whether they're on the bench or on the pitch to start with. My God, do we miss, Joe Litton and Joe Willock's energy, and certainly in the press as well. And it actually helps move us on to the burning debate, which is the next section, which I'm going to get into here. So I'm going to have me say about Dan Burn here, right? And I'm not going to be harsh. I'm not going to slag Burn off as a player or as a bloke, right? Because I think he's a brilliant character. He's fought his whole career to get back to the club that let him go as a kid. He's been brilliant for us since we've signed him, right? But let's call a spade here, right? He's past 30. He's a centre half that's been shoehorned in at left back who can do a job there, right? But when you're up against pacey wingers, which a lot of Premier League clubs have these days, and they're not household names, they're young, athletic. They look like sprinters. They don't look like footballers. They're built like sprinters. They're tough as nails. You cannot shove them off the ball because they've got upper body strength. But the quick sidestep and you're away. Now, as a fullback, anyone who play football at any kind of a level, you don't have to be, professional or even amateur, right? You've got two choices as a defender when you're up against pace. If you don't have pace yourself, you either drop 5 yards, right, and don't get too tight so the kid can't spin you, right, or you get right up his arse and you kick him 10 foot in the air. Burn did neither in that game, and this isn't the first time we've said that this season. He's been rinsed more than one occasion at left back. Now, the bit that I don't understand, Mark, this is the bit that I can't understand, right? There's a few things I can't understand. I'm going to go off a little bit of a tangent here, right? But the main thing I can't understand is, this isn't the first time it's happened to Dan Burn. You rewind back to Boxing Day, Elanga, Nottingham Forest, exactly the same thing. He was tortured by pace at St James's Park to the point where Eddie had to make a change, and he made it too late, right? He got ripped in the first half. We go in at half-time, 2-2. He's doing that clawing thing at Ogbene in the first half. It's a free kick or a pen waiting to happen. How Eddie Howe isn't ruthless enough to say, Dan, sit down, Tino, you're coming out the second half, right? Now, that prevents all of the things that happen after that. The penalty, and it was a penalty. Nobody can argue about that. He fouled him about 9 times, right? The referee let the play go. And then the final foul is in the box, right? Now, if Burn had let him go and let Botman try to cover, it wouldn't have been a penalty, right? It might have been a free kick, possibly. If Botman makes the challenge, the ref might have pulled it back. But it's the penalty and he gives it away. And then he goes for a wander up the pitch. I don't know what he's thinking. He thinks he's Lionel Messi or something. He goes up the pitch, goes for a wander, totally no man's land. He's got no pace to get back. He can't even get back to tackle the guy, let alone get back from 15, 20 yards up the pitch. So then Trippier leaves of his senses and decides to run 15 yards up the other way, leaving Cher and Botman completely exposed. Rightly so, the pair have got a bollock enough Fabian Cher when the fourth goal goes in. Yes, the midfield, again, is also MIA and let Barkley play with the ball. But this is my point. You've got Tino Livramento, fully fit, on the bench, right? Lewis Hall can't get a sniff on the bench. I'm starting to think Eddie Howe came home from a hard day's work, like Eminem's Guilty Conscience, and found Lewis Hall pumping Mrs. Howe, because that seems to be the only explanation as to why this kid can't get a game. I don't understand what's going on. Like, Dan Burn was so out of his depth on Saturday. He was getting absolutely tortured. There's no way he didn't go in the dressing room at half-time and go, God, I'm fucked. That kid's ran me ragged the first half. What happened? And then the whole situation, I'll let you come in a minute, Mark. I'll breathe, I promise.
That's quite right.
The whole situation about the fans chanting Tino, Tino, Tino. Now, good friend of ours, Dan, aka Ginger Plums, in our group chat, was at the game, and he said the crowd were chanting Tino because they saw him take his top off to come on. So they were chanting Tino, Tino, Tino. And then obviously the sub goes up, Burn goes off. The whole stadium gave Burn a round of applause because he's a Geordie boy, and all the fans love him, even when he's had a bit of a shitter, which he has. And everyone's now turning that, and misconstruing that to make it sound like people were chanting for Tino to come on for Burn. But Mark, even if they were, the fans were losing their marbles because they could see the guy getting torn to pieces, and Howe waits until the fourth goal's gone in before he makes the change. I mean, make sense of any of that, mate. I don't know how long I've rambled for, but make sense of any of that.
And breathe. No, look,
and breathe.
I wonder, and it might be completely wrong, that the change might have happened at half time had Anthony Gordon not come off injured.
Possibly.
And therefore you're making 2 substitutions at half time instead of just 1. Now, to be fair, I think Eddie Howe has to have a little bit of bottle at that point and go, yes, I'm losing a player through injury, but you have to look at the rest of what's going on and go, Burn just can't keep up. But he's been done a couple of times, and it was always going to happen, and 2 or 3 more, and it ended up costing. After that third goal, he should have been off. He should have come off straight away. And the fourth goal, God knows where he's gone. I think it's him that loses the ball. I think he's tried to play a pass and loses the ball. I've no idea what Kieran Trippier is doing, trying to dive up to kind of block the sort of the next bit of play, but ends up out of position with the player behind him. He's completely lost his head at that point. And then, that's just, everything went wrong with that one. But
just on that point as well, Mark, just on that point with what Gary's saying there about Miggy having to come out of the game, that's exactly right as well. Miggy was criticised and said he had a poor game because he was covering Dan Burn. Just before you go on, the last season, we talked about this before we came on, last season, a lot of the lack of Dan Burn's pace was masked by the utter work rate of Joe Linton and Joe Willock on that left-hand side to pull him out the shit on numerous occasions. It's no surprise that they ain't there this season, by and large, for most of the season, and he's exposed, mate.
I think so. He's having to do a lot more forward, and he's not a forward-thinking defender. He's not a Trippier by any stretch of the imagination. And he is getting caught forward, and he's not able to get back. If he's an old-style Lee Dixon fullback that just sits on the halfway line at most, you get away with it a little bit more. And last season, exactly that. You get the odd forward the odd time. But in general, the forward play was done by Joe Linton and Willock on that left-hand side, and they would cover a lot. Joe Linton's a huge miss in that, because his energy to get backwards and forwards in that midfield, to be able to cover and be able to block off that left-hand side before the problems even got to him. How many times have we seen Joe Linton move left, wide left, to block off those sort of runs and take out that kind of player by just his presence being there? I think that is huge on Burn. But for me, that it all comes down to the fact that he's been asked to play in games where he's just not suited for it. There will be games where Dan Burn is perfectly suited to play in left back, where you haven't got those speedy wingers, up against the likes of and we'll go back. Elanga was one. You come up against. I easily think a Garnacho now will probably pull that side and go for him.
Probably will in tear pieces, probably, yeah.
So there are games that he'll suit. There are games that he won't. And that's fine. And this goes back to what I was saying before about playing the game that's in front of you, not the one that's gone, not what you've seen for the last 35 games. It's what's right for right now. Dan Burn just wasn't right for that game, not in that position.
And that's on the manager. That's not on Dan Burn. That's on Eddie Howe, and we'll make that abundantly clear. Eddie Howe has put Dan Burn in that position. He's played. Dan Burn would play in goal for Newcastle. He's Geordie through and through. He loves the club, and he will play anywhere he's asked to play by the manager. He's not going to say, "Actually, Gaffer, that kid's going to rip me to pieces because I cannot catch him." He's not going to say that. He's going to take the shirt and he's going to play it rightly so, because he wants as many appearances for his hometown club as possible. But the truth of the matter is, Eddie Howe has not done the team any favours there, because he's put Burn in a position where straight away he's up against it, Mark, and you've got to sacrifice one of your own teammates to cover for him because he's getting done all the time, and that's just not clever tactics by Eddie Howe. And never mind the national media, the local fans will question that as well, won't they? Because why is he doing that?
No, and it's right. And Look, there's been a lot of, you put this on X, didn't you, about the ability to be able to criticise. Look,
Yeah,
things
I'll get to that about Burn in a minute.
yeah, things were done wrong. Look, Eddie Howe's been guilty of making mistakes, and you're within your right to say, yes, I believe he's made a mistake. The sun doesn't shine out of his arse. He's not a god. He will make mistakes. When he does things right, we heap praise on him. He's earned so much praise over the last 2 years. It's unbelievable. But he has to be called up for when he makes these sort of mistakes and continues to be fair, because it's not the first time that he's done this. And within the last, 8 to 10 weeks. So it's right to question. It's right to say, look, we don't believe it's right. That's our opinion. Rightly or wrongly, we're allowed to have one. You can't, and if you don't agree with it, that's absolutely fine. But yes, those questions will come, and I don't believe with the talk shite part about fans turning on Eddie Howe. No, we're not saying that Eddie Howe should go or that his job's on the line yet or anything like that. But he's made mistakes. It's within your right to actually say, we think you got it wrong.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, again, the thing with Burn and the criticism, as you made reference to there as well, this is a weird time to be a football fan. There used to be a time as a football fan where if a player had a bad game, you could criticize the player for having a bad game. Some of the stuff I've seen going around, honestly, blew my fucking socks off. It really did. Prominent journalists saying, hey, listen, Dan Burn went to a charity evening, and that's the kind of guy he is, by the way. You're like, what the fuck has that got to do with the fact that he couldn't catch his own arse on Saturday at 3:00? I mean, she were taking the piss out of him, saying, oh, at least you turned up here, you didn't turn up this afternoon, everyone having a good old giggle, and, oh, isn't that great? Dan Burn can laugh it off. Well, that is great that he can laugh it off, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about him being exposed during the game and costing us a penalty and going wandering and leaving his position for the fourth goal. This whole thing about, almost trying to guilt trip you into having an opinion on a player. If you don't think a player is good enough, as a football fan, it's your God-given right to express that opinion. Don't be hateful. Don't be abusive. Don't slag off the man himself, and attack him personally. But as a football fan, you've got every single right to say you don't think he's good enough to play in the team or his performance was lacking. Doesn't matter who the player is. Even if it's fucking Messi or Mbappe, you could say you thought they were poor. They didn't do enough. They didn't finish enough chances. That's every single football fan's God-given right. This new age culture, and this club is the worst for it. Ever since the takeover, it's the worst for it. You seem to have an opinion on a player. Honestly, I was listening to a prominent fan media podcast, right? I couldn't believe my ears. They were giving Louis Miley a harder time than they were Dan Burn. I couldn't believe it. I was thinking, what game were you lot watching? Because you weren't watching the same game I was. One kid played a part in 2 goals, and you're digging him out more than you're digging out the guy who conceded 2 goals or played a part in 2 goals being conceded. And then, like I say, you've got prominent journalists guilt-tripping you into saying, listen, he's a wonderful guy, by the way. Fucking hell, Fat Barry's a wonderful guy in the boozer. You wouldn't play him centre-half. Do you know what I mean? He's a top bloke. He's always got a great joke in the chamber, and he'll always buy you fucking stick him up front in the Champions League final. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the most craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. As a football fan, if you're watching this, wherever you are in the world, if you want to express your opinion, be it good or bad, express your opinion. Don't be a dick. Don't be abusive, but just express your opinion, and don't allow any of these higher than now white steed riding motherfuckers tell you otherwise. That's my opinion on it, mate. Honestly, it's driving me nuts.
And breathe again.
Breathe again. It's turned into what's going on with the rant, I think is what it's turned on. But it's driving me fucking mad. It really is, honestly. I kind of stand it.
You're absolutely bang on. Look, that message that came out from the journalist smacked of a journalist was it smacked of a please leave him alone. He's a nice guy. We know he's a nice guy.
He's my mate. Leave him alone.
Nobody's questioning the fact that he puts in heart and soul into every performance. He is a Geordie. He's at his hometown club, and he gives absolutely everything. No one's disputing that at all. All we're saying is, for that particular game and in moments like that, he was poor. That's it. If you are abusive to him, then get fucked, because that's not it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. That's crossing the line. Yeah.
And that goes with people who are giving an opinion as well. If you're abusive then to people who express an opinion, you can get fucked too, because I'm sorry, you're allowed to have an opinion, and I've just told you to get fucked for having an opinion on something. But and I get the irony mixed
I get what
in
you're
with
saying.
that.
Go with it.
But you get the point. Look, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Let's talk about it. At the end of it, we'll work out I was right, but that's different. But you're allowed to express your opinions on something. What the fuck did we used to do? We used to go to the pub and argue about this before the likes of social media. We never used to be this angry about stuff. We never used to about people who didn't agree with us. You're just not allowed to disagree with anything anymore, and it's ridiculous. Yes, he was poor. We're allowed to say it. He's a brilliant character. He's great in that dressing room. He's great for the club. He's done a ridiculously good job over the last 18 months. But for God's sake, you're allowed to say, yes, he was shit. In that particular moment, he was crap. He needed to come off. He needed to be removed from that situation, and not have, as somebody's put in the comments, I can't find it, is have his confidence completely destroyed.
Well, that's what Stevie B's saying there. That Eddie,
It's on the
Eddie
screen in front
could
of me.
seamlessly, mate. Seamlessly. This is what. See, you get lightheaded when you rant, mate, because you don't rant enough as me and breathe. But Stevie's right. He's saying he could end up destroying his confidence. I think of Harry Maguire. Prime example of Harry Maguire. How many times did we say he shouldn't be playing? Because everyone, I wouldn't say they're waiting for him to make a mistake, but the reaction to making a mistake is so amplified because he's making so many that people are going, oh, and then that's what'll end up happening at Dan Burn. If he plays Burn against Forest and Alanga burns him and the same thing happens, imagine the reaction from the fan base in the ground, on social media, and then if he plays him again in the next home game against Bournemouth, when his name gets announced, you don't want that for Dan Burn because, he is one of our own and he's putting some warrior type shifts for Newcastle. But the top and bottom of it is there is games where Dan Burn is great. That strength, that physicality, that in your face, that you're not getting past me today, mate, that kind of a thing. And Burn is perfect for that. But there's games where he's not perfect. And when somebody is running at him with rapid speed that can jink left to right and he isn't quick enough to react, he's not right for that game. There's a kid sitting there who is right for that game, and his name is Tino Livramento. Put him on the pitch. That is just a simple solution to a simple problem. And I don't really understand, what is going on with that. Marcus is saying he agrees, Chris, too many assholes. Many have no idea what they're talking about, or they are punk-ass 8-year-old bets. I like that, man. I like the mixture of American and Geordie slang there as well, mate, which is great. We've got a donation from Graham Ritchie. Good to see you, pal. Thank you very much for that. I have to blame Eddie. Eddie putting Big Dan Burn in that position. I totally agree, Graham. Eddie has to take that flack. I mean, did you see the bullshit excuse he gave? Or I kept them on because it was aerial prowess. We conceded 3 goals in the deck, Eddie. What are you talking about? Rightly so. If that had been Steve Bruce, it would have been, and everyone would have took the piss out of him, and had a go at him. But because it's Eddie Howe, he can get away with it. I'm not having it. It's bullshit, Eddie. Eddie should be called out on it. Dan will be gutted himself. Great show, guys. Yeah, thanks, Graham, and thanks for your kind donation as well, mate. But yeah, he's absolutely right. Gary says, sadly, Chris, opinions like arseholes. Everybody's got one, but no one wants to hear it. And I think as well, in terms of the journalists, I think I said this, didn't I, in the post-match, there's not many journalists who will put those questions to Eddie either. Craig Hope's probably one of the only ones who will put it to him. So many of them just seem to be wanting to be his best mate and they don't want to ask him difficult questions. And listen, Eddie's a great manager. He's the best manager I've had since Sir Bobby Robson. If I was in a room with him, I would say, Eddie, I love you. What you've done is spectacular. But after that game, I'd have said to him, why didn't you hook him off? He was getting ripped to pieces. Why didn't you hook him? I ask him an honest question because I'd want to know.
Or at least phrase it in a way where there contemplation for taking him off earlier. Did like I said before, did he have the England that he might have changed things at half time at the back to combat what they were doing, and not phrasing in a way that you fucked up and he's been awful, but phrasing in a way it's that more friendly way, isn't it? But at least put it to the to the question, because you've got the audience, you've got him there. Like he can say yes or no, he can ignore it, or he can give you an answer for it. I don't quite like the let's revert back. And I think that some of the questions we're asking, he's talked about Dan Burn since the game and said, he's been outstanding. Yes, he has. He has been outstanding for an awful lot of the time. But again, we come back to the fact in that moment it wasn't right and it should have been changed. So
yeah,
but if those journalists are going in there, you've got to have the opportunity, you've got to take it to be able to ask those difficult questions. Why not? Why wouldn't you ask them? Don't be a shithead. Don't be horrible about it, but just ask the questions that everybody is thinking.
Exactly, and I think it all goes back to Eddie's credit in the bank. I think really is why that they give him a bit of an easier ride. But if it keeps going on like this, they are going to start to ask those difficult questions because their bosses will demand it. Andy's saying he fears that Dan Burn's got a point where any mistake is exaggerated, just like it was for Maxi. He could have 3 man of the match awards and get hammered the next game. I do partly agree with that, Andy. But I think again the other part is, Maxi didn't help himself either at times. His final ball wasn't quite there, or he'd make the wrong decisions. He'd be on the floor beating the grass, and a very different kind of way to Dan Burn. Maxi had ability in spades. For Maxi, it was more the application and the attitude. It wasn't the ability. But again, it goes back to this manager has a rigid system that he wants to play, and Maxi was too much of a free spirit to fit in that system, in my opinion. And I think that's why it didn't work out. You go back to Bruce, who just had no idea what he was doing, and Maxi was this like genie in a bottle. He just used to rub and go, "Come on, Alan, save the day," and then how he would come, and score a worldie. But with Dan Burn, this whole team has been built on this rigid defensive unit, which Burn was part of. But whatever's happened, whether it's injuries, whether it's age, fatigue, he's been found out. And I think, like I said before, the fact that he's not got Joe Linton and Willock to cover his arse is making him more exposed, because the current personnel aren't there. I've seen a couple of comments about the midfield, and I agree, Mark. That midfield three don't work. It don't work because Bruno looks like a lost lamb. He doesn't know whether he's a 6 or an 8. He's in the middle somewhere. I don't know what he's doing. Sean Longstaff, 2 great goals at the weekend, but defensively, Barkley ran through him like he was tracing papers, you rightly say. Louis Miley's 17 years old, for Christ's sake. We can't be too judgmental of the kid. He's shown so much quality, but he's a 17-year-old lad. He's learning his game. He's going to make mistakes. You can't put all of your hopes and dreams on this 17-year-old kid and then rip him to pieces when he misplaces a pass or miscontrols a ball. He's 17. What's Longstaff? 26. Bruno's 24. They're supposed to be the senior players looking after Louis Miley and helping him with his game, not the other way around, mate.
Yeah, come back to that man of the match comment. Yeah, see, but Dan Burn might have 3 man of the matches in a row in games that he suited. He was brilliant in earlier games in the season, but it comes a point where just having 3 man of the match performances in a row doesn't mean that the next game you should play. Because if the tactics,
if you're not right for the game, if you're not right for the game. Exactly,
and that's what we're saying. Look, he can play against Fulham and be brilliant, but in the next game, you might come up against a wider player that has more pace, a little bit more trickery, and will have him on toast, as you put earlier on. And he's just not right for him to play in that particular game. So, and I think those then mistakes are exaggerated because of that, because of the fact that it's just rinse and repeat all the time with the side. It's the best 11 available to play. It's not always on paper or what's come beforehand that's the best 11. It's what is right for that moment. So that's it. I'll end up just repeating myself over and over again on that one. But yeah, it's a harsh, and I feel bad for doing it because I really like him. I genuinely do.
And he's ran through brick walls for this club, man. He's been immense. He really has.
Exactly.
I'm not saying he's a bad player or attacking.
No.
This is the difference. You can criticize a guy's performance without saying you think he's shit or you want him out. It's those extremities that people leap to. And whether it's subtly, like that journalist did with that tweet, I'm not going to name them. I don't want any pod wars. I do like what they do, to be fair. But I didn't agree with that. I thought it was unnecessary. As you say, it was almost a leave my mate alone type thing. So maybe you can get an exclusive interview with Dan Burn at a Blythe Chippy somewhere in 3 weeks' time or whatever. It reeked a little bit of that cronyism, and I just thought, fuck off. I'm not interested in that. If you're going to be a journalist and write the truth. Don't send out horse shit like that and try and butter the guy up. You know what I mean? Nobody will know more than Dan Burn how bad a game he had on Saturday. Nobody will know more than that.
That will have pulled him up.
Of course it will. He'd be devastated at that. His bloody mates are season ticket holders, for God's sake. Just a comment here from Simon. It's an interesting one. Is Eddie Howe a better manager than Rafa Benitez? I'm not so sure, Chris. I'll tell you what, I'll answer that, Simon. He's a more experienced manager, is Rafa Benitez. That's for sure. Whether he's a better manager, I don't know. But he's a more experienced manager. I feel that Rafa probably has more cards in the deck than Eddie does, just because of the length of time he's been a manager. Just quickly on that, Mark, before we move on, agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I think it's different periods of time, so it's really difficult to judge. In terms of Newcastle, they're probably on par. The job that Rafa did was exceptional. You know, you look at that, even though they went down with him in charge, the damage had been done. He came in and revived a dead ship. You know what I mean? The team went on such a run when he came in. They were exceptional, exactly the same way that Eddie Howe came in to the mess that was the Steve Bruce era, and revived it. So they're kind of probably on a par. I think in terms of Newcastle, I think Eddie Howe is slightly ahead of him, just with what's happened over the last 12 months or so. But they're close, probably too close to call. Either one, you could say, that would probably be the best manager since Sir Bobby, and you could argue it either way. But yeah, I think both, for different reasons, both exceptional.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the good things as well, one of the bad things obviously was Gordon going up. One of the good things was, like, everyone's seen it on social media, he was walking around the Metro Centre, no boot on, posing for photos with kids and stuff like that. So he seems to be in good form, does Gordon. And I saw something earlier on today, whether it was just an ITK thing or whatever, people saying that Gordon's all right, and he was at the training ground and he was running around on the grass. So that's huge for us if that's the case. If Gordon can play against Forest, because it looks like Isak's going to miss the next 2 games. Again, that questions why we didn't bother moving for somebody in January, even on loan. Hugo Ekitike, anybody, I don't know what was going on with that. We'll have a massive ding dong about that, I'm sure, come the end of the season when we see where we finish. But we ain't got time tonight. We'll be on for another hour. So the next section we're going to cover is somebody who always delivers. That is Wor Flags. We know the guys. We've had Thomas on the show before for Wor Flags. Absolutely amazing what those guys do. The atmosphere they create, Mark, before games. We've both sampled it. It's incredible. It really, really is. And what they did at the weekend was they had a bit of a message, didn't they? And it was a very, very important message. We've ranted about this on the channel before. I know a lot of other social media outlets have, and fan-led media has as well. And it was this, if anyone didn't see it. So this was the display that Wor Flags had at the ground on Saturday, and it was TV before fans. And they were talking about, just games being changed at ridiculous times of the weekend. And lo and behold, after this got that credence and that coverage, Mark, what happens? They go and change the game against Chelsea on March the 11th, which is a Monday, to 8 p.m. down in London. I mean, what in the fuck are these people doing, mate? Honest to God. Are they just taking the piss or what? What is going on, man?
Yeah, just thanks, RG Fox.
Thank you, RJ Fox.
Good lad. And you're absolutely right.
Top man or lady, I don't know who you are. top.
But Wor Flags are mint, and what they do is exceptional. Just before I get started as well, just El Capo has joined as a member as well. So thank you and welcome to the squad. Thank you for that.
Welcome to the squad, El Capo.
Yeah, look, we've forgotten that football is about fans now. It completely isn't. It's all business orientated. The message that the Wor Flags put out, and like I say, it was dedicated to highlighting the disgusting kick-off times that have been afforded to us by the broadcasters in both the Premier League and the FA Cup since the turn of the year. It is, and that absolutely right. That next line, it makes a mockery of the Green Football Weekend, which are being celebrated by certain broadcasters. And if you didn't see the colour of the microphones that they kept talking about, I could spot you from a mile off with you. Fucking hell, man, honestly. But they do this all the time. And Newcastle have been massively hit by these kickoff times. It's ridiculous. You go back to the FA Cup one where they put it on a time when you can't get back. There are no trains to get back at that time of night. So we're talking about keeping football green, and you go and do something like that when then everybody has to use road transport. I mean, it's so hypocritical. And once again, you go and you change a long distance, Monday night game for it just, I don't know. I can almost give up with it, because that's just not going to change. And it doesn't matter how much pressure you put on, how much you say, how many times whether you want to get in touch with the companies or the Premier League and to complain about it, it ain't gonna mean a thing. They don't care. They really don't. And it's stuff like that just highlights to everybody else just how shit this really is, and the number of games that get changed at the last minute. Is it the Chelsea one that's been changed within the time frame that they've set themselves to change it?
I think so. Yeah, I think they did. Yeah. And they've just lastminute.com did again.
Yes.
And just fucked everybody up, really. It's just, there's no care whatsoever. Just before you move on, Mark, the mighty win. Yes, mate. 120 watching, only 40 likes. How man? Yes, guys, smash that like button. It's that button, not that one. I'm pointing down. I put the wrong finger there. So smash. I went like that. Sorry, I meant like that. Smash the like button.
What are you doing?
Thumbs up, not thumbs down, not thumbs down. Yeah, smash the like, guys, if you can. Sorry, Mark. Go on. Finish your point there, mate, and I'll jump in.
Yeah, so I mean, they've got their own guidelines to follow for these games, where you've got to give so much notice in order for games to get put on like that, and they've ducked that again, and they've changed it within that. So fans have already arranged transport, they've already potentially arranged places to stay to go down for these games, and then again they're penalised by the fact that the Premier League or the FA have changed at the last minute to change the date and time of the thing. So people then having to try and find refunds for tickets or for accommodation or rearrange their travel plans and things like that. It's just ridiculous.
Do you know what I think one of the worst things that ever happened? Just Marcus there, great man, donating £10 every month for Wor Flags. I'm sure they really appreciate that, mate. You're an absolute star. One of the worst things that happened to the greed of football was lockdown football, because they got to see a world where no fans were there, and they had the TV and people were still watching the TV, and then they piped in that fake crowd noise back home. And we as football fans all thought it was vile, but those rich, greedy, fat cat executives were licking their chops, and they were just thinking, oh, this is great. We could charge people whatever we want and they'll watch it at home and all this sort of stuff. And you're totally right. And the Wor Flags guys, fantastic at them doing that as well and putting themselves out there to do it. Absolutely disgraceful in terms of the greed it's in football now. It's all about money. They don't give a fuck. Even the FFP was brought in to keep the rich clubs richer and the poor clubs poor. That's exactly what it was brought in for, and everybody can see that. Everybody can sense that. The top four clubs are the greedy six, the ones who want to fuck off for the Super League. More on that in a second. But those lot who want to fuck off in the Super League, they are the kind of people who wanted that to keep them sweet. It was like one of them, mobsters that, here's a little $50, buy yourself something nice, little smack in the cheek. That was what it was for those big rich clubs. and this whole TV money thing and the FA Cup and all, we kicked off about this last time, putting us, at 8 o'clock down at Fulham on a Saturday, and it's on ITV4. And you're thinking, are you fucking winding me up? Like, put it on the red button or something. Let people watch it that way. If you want to do that, you'll still get the views. And Newcastle fans could get down at 3 o'clock and get the last train back at King's Cross and get back at a decent time. But no, we want you to stay over, drop another 200-300 quid or whatever on trains and hotels and everything else. And like you say, Mark, never mind the carbon footprint. It's the cost. In the middle of a cost of living crisis, these people are so detached from the football fan themselves. It is obscene. Look what Fulham did. Look at Fulham the other day when the fans rejected going to the Newcastle game. Look at the statement that came out. Laura Woods even looked embarrassed to read it out on the TV. It was disgraceful. It just shows you, mate, they don't give a fuck about the fans whatsoever. And what is that going to mean for the fans of tomorrow? What is that going to mean?
Yeah. How many times have we do the corporate fans? That's the interest. That's where the money is, really. They don't make it. I always remember the comment from, was it the Bayern Munich? In fact, was it Beckenbauer in Germany that had said why, or was it the Munich owner who said, why would we charge them more? They don't bring an awful lot of money into the club in terms of the overall revenue for tickets, because they get all of their revenue from advertising, from sponsorships and stuff. So, but you have a better product by having more fans and having better fans in there. So that's the comment that always sticks in my mind. But the TV companies and ultimately the league don't care. They'll care about empty grounds. If suddenly the grounds are all empty, they might care a little bit.
Yeah,
but you would bang the nail on the head there about lockdown football, which was, did it make a scrap of difference? Did it really? Because the show was still on. It was on telly every single day, and they got more money out of it because suddenly there was a deal with BBC, there was a deal with this, there was a deal with that to be able to put more money on more football on. So I'm not sure they were too bothered. The clubs were, because the clubs were losing some income out of it, but they didn't. They had less outgoings because they weren't having to have the mass policing and stewarding and all that kind of stuff that comes with match days. The clubs, I would guess, will make very little out of the games themselves, because the money that they're getting from the fans is going out in terms of the match day stuff that they have on. But everything is geared towards football on TV. Look at the billions that Sky pay for the deals, for the international broadcasters. How much money comes in from them? The fans just are secondary to this all now.
It's interesting that comment Ty said about Sky being so desperate to include Liverpool in their visuals last season when they were 11th place. It was interesting. I don't know if anybody saw it. A shout out to a friend of the channel, Rich, the Villa Park Pod. They did some great stuff over at Villa Park Pod as well. But they had so obviously Arsenal and Liverpool played the other night, which we'll cover in Out of Toon in a minute. And they had the table of the title race. And they cut Villa off the bottom, even though they were only 3 points off Manchester City.
It's nuts, isn't
it? The Villa fans were kicking off, and I was thinking, it's the most ridiculous thing. If that had been Newcastle, I'd have been fucking seething. You were like, you've just sliced us off the bottom like you've cropped the photo. You're just thinking the rancid nature of how much they adore those teams on Sky is putrid. It really, really is. It makes me want to hurl, man.
It is nuts when you look at that top four now, and there is 3 points between second and fourth, and yet you're right. They talk about it being a top three, and it was nuts. And realistically, a lot of that happened last year with Newcastle. Well, and Newcastle was sitting in, and we got cut off. Was there a chance that Newcastle could make a play for the title and things? At one point, it was close. They almost had a game in hand and things. You thought maybe. Did Sky or anybody talk about it? Absolutely not. No. Nope. In the end, I guess that they're right. They didn't mention it. But in that moment, there's not much between them all. Things could happen, in which case you have an outside team that comes into it and can challenge. But they're so reluctant to even utter the fact that and one of the teams from outside of the greedy six can get in there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, it's a nice little segue. We love a segue on the show into the last section of the night, Out of Toon, and we might as well stick with the greedy six. So as we said, Arsenal Liverpool played the other night. Arsenal wiped the floor with Liverpool. Really, got very overexcited, as Arsenal often do. There's always extremities with Arsenal. When they win, it's like they've won the World Cup. When they lose, it's a disgrace, as he says, and he gets really pissy and gets moody, doesn't he? But somebody who got a little bit spitty, no pun intended, cough, cough, was Jamie Carragher, who was obviously doing commentary on Sky in the night. And my God, he got upset, didn't he? Now, Martin Odegaard at the end of the game was taken.
Some would say spitting mad.
Spitting mad, yes, premature ejaculation, as you said the other night.
Hero week, guys.
Absolutely, but yeah. So Carragher was obviously incandescent with his anger towards Odegaard, messing around on the pitch and having a bit of fun and games with the photographers, as I think probably most people would have saw. And he was moaning about it. And he said, "Just get off the pitch and get in the tunnel." Now this was brilliant because this prompted quite a lot of things on social media. A very funny exchange with Piers Morgan, but the main thing which made me laugh was this tweet that came up. From I think it was I can't remember the guy's name on Twitter. What was it? Was it John? I think it was, or Jimmy or something. It was.
Find a guy's name. Really bad. I've cut him off. Yeah. Jim Keegan.
Jim Keegan. Brilliant tweet this was. So Carragher said, by all means enjoy it, but enjoy it by being disciplined. He tweeted this about obviously Odegaard getting a bit excited. Then underneath. Was this is what I love about the internet. They never forget. It's like an elephant, isn't it? They said this was Carragher saying, "Look at Jurgen Klopp. while Klopp ran on the pitch acting like a complete bellend like he normally does and pumping his chest and taking all the adulation. And Carragher couldn't really get out of this. He was trying to be a bit funny and backtrack out of it and all this other stuff, mate. But again, Mark, it's the hypocritical nature, isn't it, of these pundits? They're supposed to be impartial. And I like Carragher for its worth, but his head went there, didn't it? He completely wobbled there, didn't he?
Okay, yeah, completely. It was such a bitter little
snidey remark
when your team's been beaten. But have you seen on Sky Sports YouTube channel today that they've put out a video of Jamie Carragher rates the biggest over celebrations?
Oh my God, really? Is that them trying to style their way out of it by not looking like a bunch of shit houses?
How to get him to not look like a complete bellend, which he is.
He was last night. Yeah,
he was then. I'll give him his credit. Actually, he is normally pretty good. But yeah, he's look. I get it. Your team's lost. Deal with it. But they were beaten by the better. I mean, Liverpool was shit yesterday. And they were widely beaten by the better side. So yeah, you deal with it. You move on. You get on with it. Let them celebrate. It's exactly the same as when teams kick off about Newcastle taking the team photo after every win. It's nothing special. It's not against you. They do it for every game that they win. You're not being picked on. Fucking have a word with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, there's been some very interesting backlash from teams not winning. None so more than Chelsea, who were beaten resoundingly 4-2 by Gary O'Neill. What a job he's doing, by the way, at Wolves. They got beat 4-2 at the Bridge. They were fucking terrible. There's stories coming out that they can't even sack Pochettino or they'll be breaching FFP again and no doubt be relegated. So it's actually quite hilarious, to be honest with you, because I'm not a big fan of Chelsea. Not many people are. But this then prompted the unbelievably shit winger that is £80 million worth of, is it Micaiah Mudryk, who we were linked to. Thank fuck we dodged that bullet.
Offering a Chelsea
about
that. Yeah, I genuinely forgot about that link.
Yeah, offered a Chelsea fan out on social media. This little exchange here when I think the fan was basically saying, you're not good enough or whatever. I could do a better fucking job. And Mudryk then said, well, come on then. I'll pay you money to basically do a better job, which was quite humorous. But, I mean, what are these players doing these days, Mark? Just stay off social media, man. What are you doing? Leave it alone. It's crazy.
Don't get involved in it. I mean, yeah, it's never nice to get criticised, but they've been unbelievably bad for 18 months plus now. And Mudryk epitomises that. They've spent all this money on him, and not just him. They've spent all that money on Caicedo and
Fernandez
and the 17,000 defenders that they signed. Nicholas Jackson is awful.
The only thing he successfully got into was a fucking female YouTuber, I think. Is about the only thing he successfully got into, mate. That's the only box he's got to do.
Oh dear, yeah. So well, no, I'm not. We'll not go there again. But
that's what he said.
Too right too. You don't get involved in that sort of stuff. You walk away, you switch it off, or you block, or you move. Just don't get involved in it. It's just I think the tweet that somebody put out, oh, he's offered him out for like 10 grand. He's offered to play against him. He's offered to come and do a better job, sort of thing. The way it was initially worded by them was that he'd offered him out for a fight for 10 grand or whatever it was. But you just don't get involved. Leave it alone. Move on. Try doing a better job on the pitch. Allegedly. Yes, we forgot about the word allegedly.
Allegedly, of course.
All of what we said before was allegedly. Mr. Lawyer, man.
Exactly. It's a mad little world. The whole situation with these players just losing their heads a little bit, respond to people just don't need to do it, really. Just leave it be. But there is somebody else who's getting a bit of flack as well, which is quite funny because universally in football he's quite well loved, and that's David Beckham. So David Beckham's coming under a bit of pressure here. Obviously Inter Miami and a star-studded lineup of Lionel Messi and and Luis Suarez and Busquets and all these other players. They've been a little whirlwind tour. So they played Ronaldo's team, Al Nassr, and got battered, and Laporta scored from the halfway line. Messi was on the bench for that. Now, this isn't the game that's caused the headlines. So the headlines was this one. They played in Hong Kong, didn't they, against a select 11. And all these fans went nuts for Messi coming. And obviously got tickets and came at the game, only for Messi to have been on the bench and cause absolute outrage, mate. Just honestly, what was the Inter Miami management team thinking about not playing him? Surely from a marketing point of view, and Beckham should know that more than anybody, being big in Hong Kong and everything else, mate. So,
I mean, Bex is, for a guy who markets himself massively for everything. To not play to the crowd at that point, it's just wild. You've got the biggest name in world football with you at an event that is there to draw attention to the club and draw money in and put out the brand of the club or franchise or whatever they call it. It's just bonkers, and I kind of get why the fans in the ground are so upset about it, because they've paid to go and see Lionel Messi. It's a little bit like at times when you see the NBA stars and you pay an absolute fortune to go to some of the NBA games, and then they rock up with half a team. And you've paid to go and see a LeBron James or whatever, and then he's not even playing. And I get in terms of a league games or that sort of thing, that can happen. But for going out for commercial purposes for a game like that, you've got to put the player on the field that everybody's come to see. It's just nuts.
Yeah, they really did drop a bit of a clanger on that one. I'm not entirely sure what they were thinking on that one, but yeah, it was a very, very strange one. I mean, the whole Messi thing over in America is quite strange in itself. Anyways, it's like a retirement home, isn't it? Really for these guys. In terms of the end of their career, I'm not sure how much more time Messi will actually have over there, to be fair, and Suarez and everybody else. It's just a bit of a swan song, so to speak, anyway. But moving on to the last couple of sections there. So Chris Wilder isn't happy, which is probably the most easiest understatement to talk about Chris Wilder. He's never happy, is he, to be fair? But Chris Wilder was moaning after the latest Sheffield United hiccup in their battle to stay in the Premier League, which they clearly won't be. And he went a little bit of a rant about how his team aren't getting every 50-50 going against him and everything else. And he confronted, apparently, the referee whose assistant, disgustingly enough to Chris, was eating a sandwich at the time, which he found disgraceful. And he said, well, I hope you enjoyed your sandwich while you were talking to a Premier League manager. Now, I would be willing to bet that sandwich, if the guy didn't eat it, would probably still be fresh by the time Chris Wilder is no longer a Premier League manager. I don't know what would be the race to the bottom there, but cue the internet brilliantly putting up this image of a very upset sandwich alongside Chris Wilder, and also Mark's own little take saying that he looked a bit like Beaker from the Muppets with that face as well.
Uncanny, really, isn't it?
What a miserable bastard! I mean, he shouldn't even be in that job anyway. He should count himself lucky. Shouldn't he to be in that fucking job?
But he was brought back because they were a mess, and he's brought back to try and, I think, stabilise them for the championship. But he complained after the game for walking into an office and finding a guy eat the sandwich in front of a Premier League manager. And what makes you so fucking glorious that everybody has to stop everything that they're doing just because you've turned up? Fuck off. Honest to God, man. He's got such a high opinion of himself. It's ridiculous.
Yes, you sound more and more like me as this episode is going on. But we better stop. You're going to lose all your positivity. So we've got one more Out of Toon. Then we're going to let everyone go to bed. Now, this one is Out of Toon, and also a new section, which we'd like to call Get in the Bin. And I'm so sick and tired of this boring crack that is this kid, if no one knows who I'm talking about, is this kid. No, it's not the bad guy in Breaking Bad that threw Jesse Pinkman into the pit. It's not him. It's the singer called Sean Mills, who has got internet famous for apparently his resemblance to Haaland, who plays for Manchester United. He looks fuck all like him. It's like saying out like Brad Pitt. It's the most ridiculous comparison I've ever heard in my fucking life. It really is. So this little knacker has seemed to get so obsessed with singing this song, and then Haaland started to score goals, and everybody put it all together and all that. He went to the Manchester United game, Mark, and he celebrated when Haaland scored. And your exact words were, you would have thought he'd scored the fucking goal. How old has this shit got quick, mate? Honestly.
Yeah, look, he's enjoying himself. I'll give him that. But the reaction, the film, and this is another thing that gets me, is this whole thing. There's somebody there filming you while you're at the ground. Watch the fucking game. That's what you've paid your money for. But and
you have swore a record about times tonight.
No, I am
like
really
66
sorry.
to say the F-bomb count.
I'm going to have to take a couple of weeks off just to recover.
Go to church tomorrow, you mate. Sorry, mate.
A few Hail Marys and all that. Yeah, but watch the game. Fine, if you've got your social content and all that kind of stuff, and look, he's made a big thing of his singing and stuff. Great, get on with it. That's fine. But the way that the people were reacting around him was exactly as if he'd scored the winning goal of a cup final. Not the fact that we were watching another player on the field who, let's be fair, looked absolutely nothing like him, score a goal for the team. Celebrate the goal, get on with it. Yeah, I've that sort of crack, and the fact he's ended up on every single thing going. He's been on Sky Sports and all stuff and that for singing a song and having a resemblance. Yeah, he was on the Voice Australia. Good on him. I have no problem with him getting involved in all in singing and what have you. Do it. But honest to God, man, it's so over the top.
So I'm just laughing at that comment from Stu back. They don't have the same dentist. I must admit, his teeth is reminiscent of a council estate fence, isn't it? It's all over the fucking place, to be fair. I don't want to be mean to the bloke because I think he has had some online bullying and stuff. And I think his whole,
and let's be fair, not pick on him because he's got an awful lot of flack for his appearance and things like that. We talked about abuse out of line, but that side of things is completely separate. That's all bullshit. I hate that. But it's just, I mean, like I say, celebrating the goal, those around him were celebrating it as if it was him that had scored. He's done nothing for him, let's be fair.
Don't feel too bad for him because according to 66, he's picked down under, so he's obviously doing well in some cases, mate. So, hey, good on him, mate. I'd sing as well if I was you, son. But there was a little bit of sweet poetry in this whole thing as well, to be fair, was Haaland blanked him. When he was outside the ground, and again being filmed as Haaland walked past, hoping for that interaction moment with his celebrity football doppelganger, and Haaland just went, "Nah, you're all right, mate." He just walked past. Actually, I've never seen him move that quick since he signed, to be honest with you. So fair play to him. It was quality. Oh, we got a comment there from RJ Fox. Some grand Aussie bands. He's not near. There is some grand Aussie bands. RG Fox. I like the DMAs. Actually, I got introduced to them. I saw a video of them on doing an acoustic set on Twitter, and I think they're awesome. Really, really good. So I do like the DMAs, to be fair. They're an Aussie band, so great show, mate. They're a top band. But I think there was one last one to squeeze in, Mark, wasn't there, for Out of Toon? Yes. We've got to squeeze him in because it's those scumbags further down the road, and I've got to let you get this one in, mate. Come on, you wanted to have a dig out to the team that has great feedback when they lose.
The best thing I've seen all weekend, and it's the Sunderland fans at Borough on Sunday morning at 1-1 in the game singing, "You've seen the Sunderland, now fuck off home." Now, the genius of them and the fact that they're not winning the game, they've had to come from behind to rescue a point. I mean, the genius is, it's unbounded, isn't it? Had you battered them, fine, you can sing that song all day long, whatever you want, but you haven't even won the game and you're acting like the big boys. It's just, utterly pathetic from them, and it just summed them up massively. And I genuinely laughed out loud when I saw that. It was just ridiculous, so funny to watch, unbelievable.
No wonder Alex Pritchard has ran to Birmingham to be back with
Run away quickly.
Good on you, son. And that's a lovely way to wrap up. A bit of mac and bash at the end is always a good way to put the cherry on top of any cake. So we hope you enjoyed your slice of what's going on this week, everybody. Thank you so much for being in the comments. It always helps the episode flow. We really appreciate all the interactions and a couple of new members tonight as well. Thank you so much to you guys. Welcome. Welcome into the squad. Yes, and that's us all done. As I mentioned at the start, if you are checking us out for the first time or becoming a new member, smash that subscribe button. We're close to 7,000. We've got a belter prize to give away for 7,000 subs. So help us get there. Recommend us to family and friends. Like the video too. Help the channel grow. We'll be back with some more content on the channel. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Hopefully we'll not be all under 20 foot of snow in the next few days. But if we are, we'll try and bring you some content to get you through. Have a cracking evening, everybody. And we'll catch you later. Cheers.
See you guys. Take care.